What's going on? It's Live Well Check, and I'm bringing to you one of the baits that got me into bass fishing in my life. We all have those baits. We all have that species of fish that we like to chase. If it's muskie, northern pike, walleye, catfish, whatever it is, you can always trace it back to a moment, or even more importantly, sometimes a rig, a setup, or a lure. And for me, it was the purple worm. A ribbon tail purple worm. This one I believe is actually Zoom. The one that I grew up using would have been a Berkeley power bait. Berkeley power bait was very, very prominent in the tackle box when I was growing up. Fish seemed to hold on longer. And this is back a little bit of the time when people didn't really think that scent mattered. You had that camp where people didn't think scent mattered, and you had people that were completely 100% sold it has to have scent. The way I was like brought up in fishing and what I learned as a fisherman is scent can't hurt unless it's an offensive scent, maybe gasoline, perfume, hairspray, different stuff like that that we've all come to realize and find out that is probably offensive. Um, Scent can't hurt. And when I used to use the old school petroleum based worms and all that, and they were just made in somebody's garage with no scent, and they just smelled like, sorry, I have an animal over here that's trying to interrupt me. That's why I'm making that move. But these, they didn't have any scent. And then Power Bait came out. And what I did one time is I had taken a lure. I tied it on. I literally just tied it on. I didn't have a hook. So what I did is I took a little bit of a split shot, I put it up the line, and I just tied a couple of knots on the worm. I threw it in a farm pond, and I tried to count about how many seconds it would take for a fish to want to spit it out or walk off with it and drop it. And with the basic worms, I can't even remember what it was. It was, 5, 6 seconds, maybe 10 seconds. And I would just gradually pull up, kind of what you do like when you're practice fishing. You don't want to set a bunch of hooks. So you just pull up on it, right? And you get them to let it go. Well, with the power bait, this fish would not let it go to the point where I pulled it up to the surface and it jumped and it threw the lure. So I was sold. Power worms, power bait for me they were always going to be a main factor in my tackle box, whether I was tournament fishing, fun fishing, or anything. And my friends, like as I was fishing, they would borrow some, or they'd say, "Do you think it really matters?" And I would tell them for sure. From the little experiment that I held at a farm pond, I believe I was probably 9 or 10 years old. Um, that had me sold. But this color right here, this purple, kind of a translucent. Once again, this is not the Berkeley version, but this translucent purple, the old purple worm, 6, 7 inch ribbon tail, was absolutely killer. And that's what got me into fishing. That bait right there. As I got older, I went to a little bit of a different color as I started fishing. I wouldn't say competitively, but I started fishing a little bit, I guess, different areas or different bodies of water that were a little more difficult to catch fish. It seemed like this produced better. And this is an actual old school Berkeley power bait worm. It's just absolutely beautiful. It's the half and half red shad. This color has lost a lot of favor, I think, over the years. You can tell it's Berkeley. I don't know if you can read that. It says Berkeley right there on the worm. This bait has lost a lot of favor. Uh, I don't know about the ribbon tail worm. I think the ribbon tail worm is always going to be in people's tackle box. It's always going to be on people's lines. But in general, this color seems to have lost favor. I know everyone's watermelon red, watermelon, um, pump, watermelon seed red, green pumpkin blue, uh, all the different colors you could think of. Red shad seems to be overlooked, and tequila sunrise. If I can't find red shad, I go tequila sunrise. Tequila sunrise is very comparable. It's like a purplish swirl. It's kind of weird because your red shad is more of a 50-50. You can see that right there on that mold line. It's a 50-50. Tequila sunrise seems to be swirled and blended a little bit more. Sometimes you'll find red shad like that, but not always. So what I'm going to say, I did get a chance to use something when I was growing up. These baits are special. It's probably one of the most famous baits as far as plastic worms go. And it's not what you think. Once again, this is not a trick worm, but it's basically the same thing. This is actually a Berkeley Havoc style. It's identical almost. The bottom hopper, I believe. Yep. Old school Havoc. I was always stocked up on these, so I still have some. These are key. I didn't decide to go out and get another thing that people would guess is probably one of the most famous worms of all time. So it's not the trick worm. Not the trick worm. Not that I'm going to show you is a trick worm. I do have some Redman, the jelly worms. Killer. Killer. They're a bigger version. I probably should have went and got one. Um, you know what? Should I? I can. I can go get them. I can go get them. Well, yeah. Why don't I do that? I'll just go grab a couple of jelly worms so you can see what the jelly worms look like. Freezing cold. I'll be right back. Please stop. All right. I'm back. So, as I was saying, the jelly worm. It's just a straight tail worm. It's got a little bit more beef, made more for your, it's not a bite getter necessarily. It can be. It's a good worm, but it's not like a shaky head. It's a straight tail worm, but it's not like a shaky head. The cool thing about the newest versions of these jelly worms is that I think they're like rhino hard nose or something that they call. There's a little bit of hard plastic in the top here. So when you hook them and the way that you put them on the hook for a Texas rig, the Texas rig, it won't slide up the line very easily. So that's really cool. But these jelly worms, very good on a Carolina rig. If you know what a Carolina rig is. Um, and these are very old school. These are very old school. So you have that. Also, one of my favorites, nobody really talks about this little Berkeley curl tail, 4-inch, black, always black. There's something about this that gets bit. Yes, it's a 4-inch worm. I've caught pretty big largemouth on these in the inland lakes, but you pair it with a very lightweight 8, 3/16, something like that. Small hook, very small hook, and throw it on like some 8-pound test. You toss it up around for cruisers. Um, when I was growing up, you didn't target cruisers. I've heard guys say that now that no scope is a thing, targeting cruisers, chasing cruisers. Not even 6+ years ago, that was almost a death knell. If you had an area where you felt like fish were kind of bedded up or they were existing there and you were trying to get good bites, right? Some females, even bigger males, and they were cruising, That was tough because they were extremely hard to get to bite. I didn't do it intentionally, but when you're fishing bank and you just kind of throw up there in that time of year, whether it's on a nest or something, this is intrusive enough where a fish is going to want it off the nest, but it's very easy for them to just suck into their mouth and they will eat it. So it's a bite getter. It catches big fish. It's kind of like fishing a shaky head, when it's tough to get bites. I would take this and maybe put a little heavier weight on it, and I would throw it down into the weeds in the deep weed line. It's a good bait to catch fish. That, if some of these other baits aren't working, that is going to get bit. This is going to get bit. If this isn't working, this will get bit. Right? There's a difference there. There's a difference there when you start looking at size. These, this especially, that's a personal favorite. This is one of the most famous worms of all time. But the most famous, the one and only worm of its kind, I believe was created in Florida. I'm not even sure how I got a chance to use it. I live in the North Country. It was probably picked up at a trade show, maybe traded for some baits at a tournament. One of my grandfathers used to fish Redman tournaments, so he'd fish the Ohio River and stuff like that as a co-angler. He was a good fisherman, and he tinkered around with baits and stuff, so maybe he had some access to baits that guys didn't have, or we had baits that were more produced around the North Country that guys had a hard time getting their hands on, so he traded. This is not one of his. I just remember using these as a kid growing up, and then they went out of production. They're still really hard to find, and it is the one and only ditto worm, G-tail, gator tail. That right there. This is not a big worm. This is a decent sized worm for the length. It's about a 4-inch worm, but the tail throws off good vibration. So it tends to get a little bit bigger bites than another worm that's about very comparable, same size. You see the difference there. It's just a little bit longer, smaller tail, less vibration, gonna get a lot of bites. This also gonna get a lot of bites. The thing is, because of the tail, when a big fish doesn't want something intrusive and something like this would work, this might convince it even more because that thump, it's allowing the fish to know, hey, there's something here that's enough for me to expend energy and eat. So that tail was revolutionary. It came out in the 80s. This is an actual ditto worm. I don't know if you can read that. I see it in the camera. Ditto. Bobby Ditto made these in Florida for a long time. They got a lot of press because Larry Nixon contributed or attributed this worm to a classic win on the Ohio River. Probably why so many people around here used it. Live in Ohio myself, way north, almost Michigan. But the Ditto worm then went on the next year at the Arkansas River at the Bassmaster Classic. So 2 years in a row, it was attributed to key success at the Bassmaster Classic. And then another gentleman years after that won on the Ohio River again with the Ditto worm. It's a gator tail worm. Like I said, that's a revolutionary tail. I know there's a lot of copies out there now. Zoom seems to make a mass-produced one that looks very similar, and you can always tell it's a ditto worm. It's got these eyes. It's got the eyes on it. It's very cool. That's a cool color. It's the only one I have of that color. So I did grow up throwing plastic worms. Um, Back then, we didn't really throw trick worms or anything. We'd throw the ribbon tail. Sometimes we would throw that jelly worm if we were trying to get bigger bites. And the thing that I want to communicate, I use the pre-rig worms too. I don't have any of those. I literally don't have any of those. Those are really cool. But they have the three hooks. Here, I'll just use this for argument. But they have three preloaded hooks with a wire guard on them. Renegade, a few other ones. You have to use the purple with the white stripe on the back or all black. Those are some fish getting machines too. So when I was growing up, I used those. I used the ribbon tail worms, and my grandfather on my mom's side, he fished a lot of tournaments. The Red Man, he fished out of a local club that's from around here. And then my grandfather on my dad's side actually had a bass boat, but he would only fish one lake. He kept it up at one lake. It wasn't a really big lake. It was a natural lake. Had lily pads, a lot of stumps, some rock piles, a lot of grass. Huge bass in it. Huge bass in it. I did more fishing with my grandfather on my mom's side, bass fishing. We did some practicing for tournaments. He taught me a lot of different stuff about, how to analyze water. Um, and that's where I started learning about the purple worm. Well, my grandfather on my dad's side, I have no idea who made these. I'm going to show you this. Um, these are really cool worms, just a little different. It's kind of a cross between a ribbon tail, which it is, it's still a ribbon tail, and that gator tail worm. You see it? So it's got a smaller, shorter body, right? If you look at the bodies, this body is about an inch and a half longer, but it has that unique tail design. And I'm not even sure who made these. These could have been made in somebody's garage. I have no idea. Um, I still have quite a few of these that I'll use every now and then. Um, but these catch fish as well. I've noticed that these tend to get bites like the Ditto. They get decent quality size bites, but they also catch a lot of fish. And there's something about the tail design in some of these baits that when a fish bites, it seems to be a little bit bigger than average. So let's say you're fishing around an area where you've never, even a body of water, you've never really caught any fish over 14, 15 inches. These style of worms, and yes, the traditional ribbon tail as well, but these style of worms seem to always get you around that 13, 14, 15-inch range, and not as much with the 9 or 10-inch fish, because a 9 or 10-inch fish, if you don't realize that they'll eat an 8-inch worm, you ain't fished enough. But they do. Um, I mean, I've caught 10-inch bass on 12-inch worms at night. They bite it during the day. They don't care. So I guess that's all I really wanted to share with you guys. Um, we got the Ditto worm. These are very, very hard to find, near impossible. I don't use these anymore. I maybe have 5 or 6. I don't use them. But if you're going to try one type of worm, you're getting into worm fishing. I can show you how to hook these up too. I'll do that in another video. Purple or red shad. Purple or red shad. Can't go wrong. Yeah, green pumpkin, watermelon red, they're all great. They catch fish. I also buy white once in a while if there's a lot of shad in a body of water. So if you're fishing around maybe some muddy water where there's a lot of shad, crappie, I'll throw white or some rendition of white. Could be like pearl shad. You know, they have all sorts of names. But throw a light colored bait, even a plastic bait. Looks like a crawfish, looks like a worm, doesn't matter. These fish don't know what that bait is intended to look like, but when it flashes in front of them, it looks like a minnow, looks like a baby crappie. Um, and that's what you're trying to mimic. You're trying to mimic what they're actively feeding on. So once in a while, but you can't go wrong, especially muddy water. This will produce. This will produce. This is better in clear water. It's a little see-through, right? It's not as obtrusive. This will produce in clear water as well. I don't know if it's the 50-50. I have no idea. These are killer. And every color in between. You know, your watermelon red, killer color. I'll do some videos on colors too. There's a lot of unique colors out there, and sometimes they have specific utility. But in general, any color is going to work in any situation. If you only have black or red shad or watermelon red, don't worry about it. Throw it on. If you think a worm is going to work in that specific condition, it will. Now, black might get more bites. Maybe they can see it better. But if you're presenting that lure where a fish lives and you think that that's the presentation, not a vertical presentation, but more of a horizontal presentation, or not a horizontal presentation, but a vertical presentation. Sorry about that. If you're fishing on the bottom, they're going to bite it. It doesn't matter the color. Don't get hung up on the color. But once in a while, color does matter. All right. Well, that's all I have for right now. Go out and get some worms, ribbon tail worms, 6-inch, 7-inch. They even have the real big ones. Grab you a couple bags, couple different colors. Straight black, can't go wrong. Purple, it's the tried and true. That is what I would call the OG color. If you talk to any old school dude that fishes for bass, they grew up fishing on the lake, and fishes plastic worms. I don't care if it's jelly worms or anything. I was going to bring in a jelly worm. I got a bunch of purple ones too. Purple. Old school guys will tell you purple. Purple, it works. It seems to work. Works in any clarity of water, rocks, weeds, does not matter. It will catch fish. But until another time, we can talk about rigging and we can talk about color. But the Ditto worm, check it out. There's some good history. Bassmaster Classics won on it. I would really like to get my hands on some because that'd be really cool. But I only have 5 or 6. You can get them for about $1 a worm or $2 a worm on eBay. You can go get a 20 count, but it's going to cost you about 25 to 32 bucks. So I don't know if it's worth it because you can catch one little rock bass on this thing and it's toast. If you really want to use it, it's worth it. Zoom G-tail, I don't have any. Those are good, but fish a worm, tight lines. Check in with me another time.